Of course, things that happen in Washington, D.C. can have a big impact on all aspects of the beef business, including exports. We sent Cattlemen to Cattlemen reporter Russell Nemitz to our nation's capital to get an update on some of the issues that are top of mind for all beef producers. Russell?
Every day here in Washington, D.C., the National Cattlemen's Beef Association is working on behalf of its members nationwide on key legislative priorities that are impacting today's U.S. beef cattle industry. And one of those leaders here at the NCBA's office in our nation's capital is Colin Woodall, the NCBA's Senior Vice President of Government Affairs. Colin Woodall, and as I mentioned, there is never a lack of issues to talk about here in our nation's capital.
Never a lack of issues, and that is especially true here in the fall of 2017 when Congress is looking at the whole year and realizing they haven't done much, and now they're trying to do everything they can to get as much done as possible before they go home for Christmas.
You know, one of the big issues that we've been talking about for a few years now, and we could see a little bit of reform on, is the EPA's highly controversial Waters of the U.S. rule, and certainly a little bit of reform on that would be some excellent news for cattlemen and cattlewomen.
It would be excellent news, and it is excellent news because fortunately the EPA Administrator Scott Pruitt has taken the action to roll back the Waters of the United States, or WOTUS rule. So we're excited about that, and that should be finalized here over the next couple of weeks. But that's not the end of the discussion. We then have to go in and find a replacement for their rule to make sure that we can still protect the quality of waterways, but better determine whose jurisdiction it is to regulate those waterways, whether it is the state or local governments or on the federal side. We want to make sure that we put some sideboards around that federal jurisdiction and do so in a way that not only helps maintain water quality, but more importantly protects private property rights, which the WOTUS rule never did. And I do believe that the action by the administrator is going to give us a replacement rule that will achieve both of those goals.
You know, another big issue that's being talked about here in this town and certainly out there in the country is the next farm bill. And like a lot of other ag organizations, the NCBA is tackling the 2018 farm bill head on as well these days.
The Farm Bill is always a priority for NCBA, and it's a very complicated piece of legislation. We do have good news, though. It looks like the budget that the Congress passed is not going to have the amount of cuts that we originally expected. So that means that both the House and Senate Ag Committee will have a little more money to work with as they are looking at building this particular piece of legislation. For us, we're engaged on several different levels. First of all, we want to make sure that we have a strong research title. The research that is done by USDA's Agricultural Research Service and our land-grant universities is critical to our success in finding ways to be better producers and, more importantly, finding ways to protect ourselves from foreign animal diseases. We also want a conservation title that is good at providing the cost share programs that have been so successful in helping producers comply with a lot of those EPA regulations. Programs like the Environmental Quality Incentives Program, EQIP, for example. We want to make sure that we protect those and, more importantly, make them easier for producers to actually utilize, and that they don't go blind on paperwork like unfortunately we hear happens quite often. And then, of course, we're spending a lot of time working on our FMD vaccine bank to make sure that this is put in place. And I think that hopefully with the amount of money that the committee now has to work with, we can try to get that done. But we also have to spend a lot of time playing defense, making sure things like COOL and the GIPSA rule don't come back to life. So we have a lot of work to do to make sure that the Farm Bill is something that is beneficial to cattle producers.
What's the latest on the trade front? There's been a lot of news and a lot of headlines here of late regarding trade.
We are spending all of our effort right now just protecting what we have. We continue to hear the president talk about pulling out of NAFTA, pulling out of the South Korean Free Trade Agreement, the KORS agreement. Those are all very concerning to us given the amount of business we do with all those countries. So unfortunately, we find ourselves in a very defensive position trying to maintain what we have. And that's, like I said, unfortunate because we would like to spend more time working on new deals, in particular trying to create some sort of bilateral agreement with Japan to replace the TPA agreement that we pulled out of, and also to look at the United Kingdom. In a post-Brexit world, they're going to be looking for trading partners, and we're hoping that'd be an opportunity for us to try to expand into Europe and to find some people over there who understand what production technologies are about and are willing to actually accept that science and technology. So we're going to continue to push for additional access, but again, I expect we're going to spend a continuous amount of time just trying to defend what we have.
You know, we've covered quite a few issues on today's segment. Last question, Colin. I mean, everything you've talked about, it does still seem that there's a lot of positive momentum for not just the U.S. livestock industry, but U.S. agriculture as a whole, and a lot of positive things coming out of this little place we call Washington, D.C.
There are a lot of positive things. And when you look at a relationship with the administration, not only the president, but his undersecretaries and his secretaries at different cabinet levels, we have a whole new relationship than we've had over the past several years because we have an administration that's willing to come and talk to us and ask us about the rules and regulations that they're putting in place and whether or not they're going to impact us. And if they do impact us, trying to find ways to mitigate that impact. That has been a breath of fresh air, and we're just relishing every bit of it. And we hope to be able to capitalize more on it here over the next several years.
Colin, as always, thanks for joining us on Cattlemen to Cattlemen.
Thank you, Russell.
All right, Colin Woodall, the NCBA's Senior Vice President of Government Affairs here in their Washington, D.C. office.